welcome Paige, James, and Taylor to session 5. It's fundraising time and it's accelerator time. So panel, I want you guys to introduce yourself, introduce your accelerator, talk about the type of companies you look for, and just briefly describe your program as an introduction. So let's kick off with Paige.
Hey everyone, good morning. I hope you all are doing well, or good evening, wherever you are. My name is Paige Hendricks-Buckner. I'm the program director at Founder Gym, and my responsibility is essentially to act as a guide to underrepresented founders who want to learn how to make money using their business, and then also go out and fundraise for their tech startup. So just a little bit more about Founder Gym. We started in 2018 with our very first cohort. We are now wrapping up our 14th cohort, teaching founders how to raise funds. And we specifically serve underrepresented founders. And so that means folks who are in the LGBTQ community, who are Black and Brown founders. We also serve founders abroad. So we've served founders in 23 countries at this point on 6 continents, which has been really fun. And our goal is to help underrepresented founders not just grow their businesses, grow their revenue, raise capital, but also create the world's largest network of underrepresented founders. So I have the privilege and the honor of leading them in that journey. We have a lot of fun together. And we're like a family. So we call it FG Fam in our community. And I'm really honored to be here because I think folks who are on this call right now could be potentially great fits for our programs, because we're looking for folks who really are clearly the right founder to build their company. So the 2 different programs that we have, I'm going to focus on the fundraising cohort because we are talking about fundraising here. We're looking for founders who can really demonstrate founder company fit, right? Like they're the right founders to build this company. And we look for founders who are all the way from, they're at idea stage and they're developing out their idea. Maybe they're working on this part-time, all the way to founders who've raised up to $2 million, who are trying to figure out how to kind of restart their fundraising journey and build their network a little bit better. So I'm really honored to be here today and excited to answer your questions.
We're happy to have you, Paige. Thanks for joining us. James, tell us an intro about you and Transparent Collective.
Okay, cool. I'm James Norman. Thanks for having me. Transparent Collective was started back in 2015, and the impetus for that was simply I've been down the founder journey for many years, and I was well networked in Silicon Valley and thought to myself, if this is this hard for me, it's impossible for others. So how do we open up that network, and how do I give people all the learnings that I had so that they don't have to hit the same walls, and then have a little bit more access to the network that they need to actually get to the capital. So traditionally, and the program is unique in the sense that, it's run by mostly people who are operating. And I think that's like a big strength, which we'll probably touch on later around accelerators. But we focus on companies that have a product and some form of customer validation, giving us a sense of, you spent time trying to get something off the ground, likely unfunded, because we service people who are either women or people of color, and there's a high chance that you didn't have any money to get to that particular stage. And then we usually fly people out, house them, and run a week program. So we bring all the mentors to bear in one place, and it's really intensive because you're really not moving too much over a 5-day period, and everybody's coming to you. So we try and touch on a few different places, take you fun places that you might read about, like go to Google or Asana or Dropbox or something like that. But we set up some locations that we do it. So this is the first year we're doing it virtual. It's interesting because 1, it's cheaper, but 2, there's some people who's just really hard to pin down their schedule. It's hard to coordinate so many great people in one time when people are traveling. But in the world of COVID, where everybody's at home, it's been a lot easier to really curate all the people I do want without having any conflict of schedule. So I'm really curious how that goes and what the effect is. So that's Transparent. We've had 40 companies so far. We've helped them raise over $35 million early stage funding. And we have 12 more companies coming later this month. We're excited to keep doing that. And I personally run Pilotly, which is the first market research platform built for creative content.
Thank you for being here, James. And Taylor, tell us a little bit about Techstars and the program.
Sure, it's an honor and pleasure to be here with you all today. Excited to share what I know, and hopefully that informs some thoughts on how accelerators might be a fit for you all. or not, equally important. So Techstars is the global platform for investment and innovation. We actually operate approximately, give or take one or two, I think 47 accelerators globally, many of them here in the US, but a lot also in Europe, in the Asia Pacific region. We've been doing this, we've actually run 228 accelerator classes at this point. There's over 2,000 companies that have graduated through those. So our in is relatively large in that sense, but one of the things that really distinguishes how we like to approach the accelerator process is that it's a mentor-driven accelerator, meaning that similar to, I think, what we just have heard from James, for example, we believe in the power of strong mentors and really try to surround our founders with that. We keep our classes relatively small. So, there's some different dynamics between accelerator programs out in the world. We have 10 companies per class. And that's to drive focus on support for those companies to be as successful and those founders to be as successful as possible. I myself have spent most of my career as a founder, CEO, and COO of startups and growth stage technology companies. I also founded a nonprofit called Patriot Boot Camp, where we help military spouses and military veterans on their pathway to become startup founders. So we've been running that as a nonprofit sort of pre-accelerator, early incubation support program for over 10 years now, and I've worked with over 1,000 people to support them on their journeys from that community.
Wow, incredible. Taylor, well, first off, thank you all for being here. This is an all-star panel on accelerators, and I really want to jump in because we've got about an hour and I want to get to some audience questions. But really, we're very grateful for you guys for taking the time out of your schedules to do this for the founders here on the call. So thank you. Taylor, since you kind of broke it open, let's start high level. Talk about how does a founder know if an accelerator is right for the company?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and there's not one answer. So I think that's important to acknowledge from the beginning. But an accelerator is not the start of the journey, and it's not the end of the journey. So where I go to is, what are you trying to achieve with your company? What is this mission that you're on? What are your values for what you're trying to achieve? What outcomes are you trying to achieve on that journey? And that can be, everything from, what you're building and the impact of it, to economic potential of it, to how it integrates with your life. And you need to think about all those things, because when you decide to participate in an accelerator program, and there's lots of different types of accelerators and the words incubator, accelerator, there's a lot of probably definition to discuss there as well, but sort of the taking money into a structured program to try to help you achieve more in a very short period of time is kind of how I'll throw some loose definition around that. You're bringing someone into your company effectively. And probably in legal ways, like they're now on your capitalization table. They might own part of your company, they might not. But at the very least, they're going to be in your schedule. You're going to plan to spend time with them. And so you want that influence, and you have to be comfortable with, are they going to help you achieve those outcomes that are on the roadmap that you're trying to build for this company? And that's where there's no one best accelerator, in my opinion. I'll say that. And that's true of Techstars and any others. It's, does it align with what you're trying to achieve? It's, can they, you're like, hey, I really need to raise capital. Well, there's lots of accelerators that are great at that. What types of capital? What does their network look like, et cetera? Or maybe you're like, I don't want to raise capital. I want to focus on sales and sales traction. There's accelerators that are better at that. Beyond that, I would also say, don't miss the importance of the human connection, the human people element on the inside. Do you jive with that team? Do you connect with that, whether it's the leader of the program staff, the types of mentors they're bringing in. So start there. The accelerator is just a part of the journey. So I would say, do that, do the diligence from that perspective of saying, I want to accomplish this. Can your accelerator help me? That's I think the most strong place to start. I'll pause there. I can talk about hours.
No, it's like an extension of the philosophy of fundraising. Yeah, vet and all those things are said are really great. James, you said something really intriguing, and let me make sure I caught you right. You fly the companies out and put them up. Mm-hmm. That is fascinating to me. When I interview companies for Launch Accelerator, I get that question every other company. Will you guys fly us up? Will you get us a train ticket? Founders being scrappy. So that's really interesting. Let's talk about not only that, but just the overall value exchange. accelerators have lots of different value exchange. Some take equity, some actually invest in your company with cash. Some actually charge you to join. There's so many different variables. Why don't you tell us what your terms are, and tell us why it's a value for a company to join the accelerator?
So we're a nonprofit. We don't take any equity or anything. I think the format and the value exchange of an accelerator, I guess, depends on the goal. I was personally trying to solve a problem that I personally had that I knew other people had. And so that would require a certain approach to the problem, right? I can't be taking equity from the company when I don't have any money to exchange, right? I can't expect these people to be able to fly out here because I know they don't have any friends and family around and they ain't gonna have nowhere to stay. So like there has to be solutions to these things because otherwise you're just not gonna get the right people that have the same problem. So if I get the person that is willing to give up 3% and can fly out to San Francisco and stay for a week, and that person doesn't need any help from me, that person's not like me. So like, I'm probably not solving the problem that I need to solve. So I think every accelerator has their way of solving the problem that they're trying to solve. I kind of like thought about this in detail more recently and thinking about like YC, like Y Combinator is still like a very highly held accelerator, to me, like the format of it has changed so much over time. Like it's not as relevant to me as it would have been 10 years ago. But they're solving their own problem, right? So when I look at it from that lens, if you have a bunch of Ivy League people who are early 20s, just out of college, maybe done one startup in their life, who feel like they own the world, and you're learning from people who are the same, then you can create success because you understand each other's journey and like how you're going to react to things and what your outcome is going to be based on certain actions. Their approach to things may not work for people who don't look and sound have the same worldview as them. And so I think like solving the problems and building a company, it's helpful to learn from people who kind of walk the same path. So the exchange of resources for me, mine is different, right? So I'm still a founder. I still want to keep expanding my network as far as investors go. And I have a network to offer other people. I have information to offer to help make them successful. So in exchange for doing that, I'm able to continue expanding my network effortlessly, right? So I might not be getting money from them. I might not be getting equity from them, but personally, I benefit from it because I'm here speaking to you now, and my network's endless at this point. So, so I think like it depends on what you're trying to do. Some people are building a business and trying to both have impact but generate value that can grow an organization of people that can continue to expand the value, and like there's different models to it. So I think that just depends on what you're doing. And most accelerators are just a unique form of venture capital, right? Like they have LPs, and that probably is more like Techstars, right? You guys have LPs, and like there's a certain amount of money being distributed. Here's a certain amount of returns we might get based on this many startups coming through. So that's more of a different flavor of VC. So I think it just depends. But going back to your original question, it was just about like what value exchanges, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's it. I mean,
Yeah.
and you have to, and then going back to what Taylor was saying, when you evaluate what the accelerator can do for you, particularly based on like its capabilities, then you can better evaluate whether or not it's worth giving up that percentage of the company, right? Because like, if you are at $1 million in revenue and you already took on some money and you're just looking to maybe try and find a way to get to that next level, like giving up 6% of your company might not be worth it because you might already have like some sort of product market fit, but maybe you need to figure out a sales strategy or to like really scale it, or you need to figure out how could you raise a few $1 million. And these are things you might be able to become transparent collective for, but if you don't have that, you might say, all right, let me go check out Techstars because I just built my product. I got it in a customer's hand. I really think this could be the biggest next thing. I know they have great mentorship, and they maybe Techstars has all these, like, I'm taking your words right now, but they have all these vertical based, very specific programs that, like, I remember in Detroit they had like the automotive, like, future of travel, future of transportation, right? And it's like if I'm building a transportation based app, I'm kind of early in that game. I really believe Techstars could take me to like full scale. then I need to go like really focus on that program. And that 6% is going to be like well worth it, because they're going to bring in Ford, and they're going to bring in like people who focus on AI. They're going to like bring in the people I need to focus on that particular vertical.
Right, right. Okay, so powerful explanation that connects. And Paige, once a founder has vetted, the message there is not all programs are created equal. Do your diligence, check them out, make sure it works for you. Once the founder's done that, the next step is application. Now, probably every founder on here has applied to YC and gotten, most of us got a no. What is it? Roughly 1 to 2% get accepted in all accelerators across the board on average. So why don't you talk to us about the application process? What are you looking for to accept a company into? What do you think accelerators in general are looking for to accept a company into the program? And how can a founder best position herself to get accepted?
Yeah, I think this is a great question. And I wanted to start off by just yes-anding what Taylor and James just said, which is it's really critical that you understand what they're offering and how well it aligns with what it is that you are building and where that fits into your milestones for the next 12 to 18 months, the next 5 to 10 years, right? Whatever form of capital you're getting out of. If you're eventually getting venture capital out of it, then definitely for the next 5 to 10 years. I just dropped a link in the chat to how to submit a great Founder Gym application. I actually wrote this because having been a former founder, I think that I was often shooting in the dark and just like spraying and praying with applications to get into things. And because I was constantly moving, trying to just build the company, I wasn't taking into account the things that Taylor and James so eloquently explained earlier. So I think that the first thing is starting with understanding the program and its alignment with your needs. I just wanted to say that. The second thing is when you're going to submit an application, this comes back to what founder fit is. Well, and this is a great question. Thank you, Luciano, for asking. Founder fit really is clearly explaining why you're the right founder to build this business. And I think this comes back to the fact that in the beginning, whether it's folks investing in you because they're giving you their capital to grow your company, or it's your customers, it's about you. Like they're believing in you at the beginning. So we need to clearly see that you're the right founder to build this business. And I will say from personal experience, when I was building my own company, and then as I watched Founder Gym founders build their company, I think one of the most important activities founders can do is sit down and articulate why they're the right founder. And you can often find that in your past. You can look back to your professional and your academic experiences and your personal experiences. Like James just talked about, I had this problem myself, so I'm solving this problem for myself. He is the customer, so he can clearly articulate the pain points that he had and then use that to build a solution that really aligns with those pain points. The other part about that is what we're looking for when we talk to founders is we're totally virtual, which I forgot to say earlier. We've been a completely online experience since 2018, and our intention there was to really democratize access to information for fundraising. Because we know that historically underrepresented founders have other issues that they're navigating around not having enough money to go live in another city, right? Or like James was talking about this earlier, it's like, I'm gonna pay for your ticket because I know you ain't got the money, right? Like I've been there, I understand that. That's real talk, right? So when we think about giving folks access, we wanted to give people, whether they were in their 20s and young and scrappy and ambitious, or they're in their 60s. We have founders in their 60s who are building businesses and are also putting kids through college. Or, we had a founder who joined our program and she had a kid who had to move home because of what's going on with the pandemic, and she's taking care of her kiddo. So I think what we're looking for is founder fit first, and then the rest of this we believe falls into place. If you're the right founder to build the solution, you're going to figure out how to iterate your solution, find the right team members. You're going to clarify when I tear your deck apart for the third time, you're gonna update it because you care so much about this, and there's no one else in the world who cares more about it than you do. So that's really what we're looking for at the end of the day, because we know companies are going to change. I mean, we've had companies full on pivot in the middle of the program. Our program's only 6 weeks. Pivot in the program and go out and start building, in week 3, and they come to graduation with a totally different company. And so we don't accept people based on the specific company they have or even the initial traction, because we know that also can change. A pivot can mean you have a whole new customer all of a sudden. So Luciano, I hope that was helpful. And then also Sunny, I hope I answered your question.
No, you did. I mean, no, you did. That's the information people are looking for, and appreciate the link to the content. That's great. Isn't it funny? It always comes down to people and audience. Don't sleep on this opportunity. You get to ask your question live. If you drop a great question in chat, we'll send it through and we'll call on you. So remember that before we end the session.
Can I throw in one quick point? Because
I want you to throw in one quick thing, Taylor, but I want to throw a question at you to add on top of that as well. Because if my math was right, and you've Techstars, which is a huge brand of Accelerator, done a lot for founders, is back 2,000 companies. That means you guys have seen 200,000 or so applications, probably more. What I'd love you to talk on, tack on to Paige's answer, but also James, talk about non-starters. Help these founders, because sometimes I know as a founder, you apply for YC or Launch or 500 or Techstars, and then you get that very friendly no, and you're like, why? Was it something I said? Is it just my startup's lame? What happened? What are the non-starters to help the founders avoid the pitfalls in the application process? Plus whatever else you wanted to add. Go ahead.
it's exactly the same topic. So mine's
great. Good.
Okay. So, because
Knock
it's just
it out.
like, I find that those numbers that are out there, like 1 or 2% get in, is like daunting in the wrong way. And let me tell you sort of how I decompose why it's daunting in the wrong way. The application process, if you think of it as submitting a form, is completely unfair and not built for success. That's where those numbers come from. If you just drop an application in and hope that you're going to get picked, that's where 1 or 2% comes from. The people that are focusing on getting in are demonstrating exactly what Paige was talking about, because I love that definition of founder fit. They're showing to the decision makers that they have that founder fit. And honestly, that is so hard to do on, the digital pieces of paper that are applications. And like, yes, maybe there's a video, but it's like a minute long. And, we're all doing it with our cell phone cameras and there's no actual human interaction. The way that companies stand out to the people that are selecting the class, no matter what it is they connect with that founder. And not only does it just sort of read like, oh, I can see these people have some hustle and they're going after it, but like, this person is on earth to solve this problem. If you can find the way to interact with that, whoever the decision maker is, managing directors in the Techstars case, there's always one managing director who's responsible for selecting the class. So I'm responsible for that for the Workforce Development Accelerator. There's 47 other people like me. And to your point, I don't actually even know the number of total applications we've ever seen, but the odds are very different for how you interact with the process. And we try to, we're still working on getting better at it and we have a long way to go. But the question is, look for those ways, because managing directors don't want to sift through 1,000 applications. We want to meet people, because the truth is we're looking to build relationships. Like, I know when I select someone to be in my accelerator that I'm responsible for making that selection for, like, that's me offering a 10-year relationship to them. And so like, I want to have conviction that like, not only like just when I hear them talk about what they're building, I can feel their passion. I know that they have that founder fit that Paige was talking about. And similarly, like, I hope that I'm creating that space for them to decide, like, maybe they're like, I don't want to work with that guy. And like, that's totally fine. It goes both ways. Remember that. That's the other thing, is like, there's so much asymmetry in the experience of founders of feeling like I'm pitching, I'm putting myself out there. It goes both ways. Know that. Take agency of that. Because you know what, when you do that, investors respect it. They see it.
That's the straight dope right there. Sage advice. So James, once in, from both lenses, you're a founder, you run a program, talk about what companies can expect. And I want you to talk about how to get the most out of a program.
Okay. So there was one note I didn't want to throw out based on what he was just saying.
Oh, yeah.
Leading into that. Around like the application process, I will say, just having seen a bunch of applications, to transparent, like, I think what he's saying is like super key. And I don't think I really thought about that myself when I was originally like applying to accelerators. But part of that also was just like my proximity to Silicon Valley. Like, this was like earlier on, like Techstars was still new-ish. It was still really only in Boulder in New York. And then YC was only in California. So like, and I wasn't heavy on LinkedIn. I don't know. It's just like, I didn't feel like a way, how can I talk to these people? Like the best way I could get to them is through the application. But it's good to know, like, it's good to think about like, hey, how can I reach out to these people, make connections, ask them for a virtual coffee? I'm really interested in doing this, and finding ways to through your words articulate how much of a fit you are for things, because that's what it's all about. I think I learned that. I remember I was applying to YC, and I called up Mike Seibel. I was like, "Yo, it's impossible to get in the YC. You tell me it's possible? It's literally impossible." He's like, "Well, let me see." So like we sat down and we wrote the application. I'm writing. He'll be like, "No." I'm like, "What do you mean? I'm answering the question." He's like, "Nah, that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking like it's like the questions that are being asked are like very light questions, right? And it's like
Yeah.
it's up to you to like articulate as much as you can of how much you are a fit for it through the questions. It's kind of like being in an interview, and like it's like being on TV, which I didn't learn. People ask me questions, and I answer them. No, that's not how TV interviews work. I'm here to tell you what the hell I'm talking about, and so you can ask me whatever question you want. What's your market traction? Well, I have some traction, but let me tell you about this one great customer. Blah 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 blah. You know what I mean? Like you have to like you're telling your narrative, like your own personal narrative. Who cares what questions you're asking me? I'm not here for that. I'm here to tell you what the hell I'm doing. And if you are down, you are down. If you are not, you are not. So like I think like that's the key way to come at that. And then as far as going into it, man, like if you pick the right one, then you should also be choosing like what you want to get out of it. So for me, when I did 500 startups, it was like um, I just wanted validation. There ain't no black founders money. So if 500 gave me money, then maybe you will believe that I'm worth giving money. And so that was my entire purpose of the program. So now 500 is great for market, for growth, for like running these experiments, iterating, expanding your strategy in terms of growing your like sales channels and growing your user base. These are not things I needed. I needed money to like build my company. And so I purely focused on finding a point of contact there that was going to be like my mentor throughout the whole thing, who was an operator and had relationships with investors. And that's all I did. I spent time with him. He taught me like how to better explain my narrative. Who should we talk to? I just spent literally just like time building up my blurb and how should we change the deck and how much money should we raise? Like that's what I did the whole time. And so by the time I got to demo day, I already had a lead investor, but that was my goal, right? Um, and so the experience can vary based on the outcome you're looking for, but you really want to know your potential outcome ahead of time. And I saw like a question in the side here about like, your values versus Accelerator values. Accelerator is not here to provide any values for you. Like, Accelerator is here to provide you like help. You're going to get a ton of feedback, and like some portion of it is not going to make any sense to you because people are trying to help you, but they don't know as much about your market. They shouldn't know as much about the market as you do. So you have to like take this feedback with a grain of salt, not like throw everybody's feedback out the window. Like if you hear something 10 times, it's probably right. If you hear something once, it's anecdotal. It's up to you whether or not you think that fits into what you're doing. And you have to be ready for that. You're going to be overwhelmed with information, and you have to kind of believe what you believe in, and use these things as like tools to like build your house. Like if you just constantly rebuilding your house every day, you're going to leave having done nothing.
Powerful.
So you kind of got to like, you know, come in there with what you want the outcome to be and work with that in mind the entire time. And you said one more thing. You said something about the experience, and you said something after that. What you saying?
No, that actually summed it up. Talking about getting the best out of the program, but I want to turn to Paige on a question before she bursts out of her skin because she's really jamming on what you're saying. By the way, I don't want to see her explode. Okay, like the emoji. If Paige, so James talked about money. That's right. It's money and help and all that. A lot of the questions I get, and I know, look, underrepresented comes in a lot of different ways. It can come in geography, it can come in, and I know one of the ways that resonated for me is I had zero connections, and everybody asked, hey, I need capital, we need money, but a lot of the reasons people apply to accelerators is because they don't have any help, like connections, network. Can you talk about how an accelerator, like what network do you bring? If I'm doing a startup in health tech, do you introduce me to medical people? If I'm doing a mobile app marketplace, are you going to introduce me to mobile app people or marketplace people that can help me? Talk about the network help that accelerators provide.
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I think this is different from accelerator to accelerator. So I'll talk about it in two different ways briefly. One is my personal experience, and then the other part of this is the experience that we provide. So first, I'll say network is everything. At the end of the day, network is everything. So think about what kind of network you want to build, because that will give you access to mentorship, to money you didn't even know that was out there. One of my favorite stories is I was looking for mentors and I was looking for capital, and I had it right there in my network, but I never thought to ask. And I think as an underrepresented founder, I struggle with this often because I don't feel comfortable asking other people for money or help. Like, part of what I grew up with is like, you got to figure this out. Like, I can go talk to my family about stuff, but I don't go ask other people outside of my immediate network for things. So it culturally kind of goes against what I've been raised, right, to know and experience. And so I had to learn how to ask for help from my network. I had to learn how to comb through my network and find a mentor who had previously been the vice president of operations for our main competitor for 10 years. And he was willing to come on and be an advisor, but I had never even thought to look at my network to make that ask. And then someone else who was like, well, why aren't you asking me for $10,000? I'll give you that money. And I was like, really? You'll give me money? Dang. I mean, I just didn't know what I didn't know. And that's part of the work that we try to do, is demystify the power of people's networks. And if you don't have a network, how to be strategic about building it. So some accelerators can say like, oh, we are in, and I saw somebody talk about ed tech, like we specifically focus on ed tech, and we'll offer you connections to mentors. We'll offer you connections to investors. We'll introduce you through a demo day or whatever it might be. And I'm actually, Taylor, thinking about the power of Techstars and watching companies go through Techstars and get access to that mentorship. My husband went through Techstars and just watching the transformation for him. He's from a really small town in Corvallis. My husband was a bouncer in nightclubs, and like his background was in like sports and that world. And he was like, I don't even know where to start. And we live in Portland, Oregon now, which has been a wonderful place to start our companies. But he needed to grow his network for his company in his specific sector way outside of Portland, Oregon. So I think Techstars really helped him do that. And I think about what James is saying with Transparent and the work you all are doing by bringing people who maybe historically haven't been in that space to build relationships with people, because that's what it's all about. So as far as what Founder Gym does, what we think a lot about is how do we create relationships and authentic communities so people are willing to introduce each other. So we have at the end, we have a graduation day. People provide their 2-minute pitch. We give them feedback on that, and then we share it with our expert trainer network, which is like 80 of the top accelerator directors, and we have venture capital firms, we have angel investors, we have startup founders. So it's a really cool opportunity for folks to get their information out there. But more importantly, we teach founders how to think through who they need to reach out to on their peer level. So we help them build a strategy to build their peer founder network by creating a list of people they want to build relationships with, or kinds of people they want to build relationships with, or an investor dream team list, which is where they write out the investors they want to reach out to and ask, if I don't know this investor, who in my network might know that investor that can then make an introduction for me? So part of what we're trying to do all the time is empower our founders to leverage what they already have, and then also leverage the network of Founder Gym. I talked to a founder the other day, and it's going to bring me to tears, I think, but she's running for office now, and she's applying what she learned as a founder to running a campaign in Florida, where if she wins, and she lost by 221 votes, so she's contesting it, but her first 15 people in the door to help her fundraise were Founder Gym founders. The people who helped her build a website, Founder Gym like she leveraged that network, and she's like, if I didn't understand how to leverage my network, I wouldn't have been able to apply that to politics. And I think, to me, that's what geeks me about this work so much, right? Like, it has nothing to do with your startup. It's about building future leaders who can help transform our world into a better place, because like Taylor said, they're on this planet to do this work. So Sunny, I'm going to keep yelling at you, but I'm going to stop because I'm so excited about this. As you can tell, like I'm like very excited about it.
Oh, we can tell. Trust me, we can tell.
I make one note on what she said.
Of course, James.
Because I want to make it very specific. Like, this is another thing when I'm solving a problem. Like, Black people have a different relationship with finances than other people. It is what it is. So when it comes to raising money, you get the $500,000, you're like, I better hold on to this $500,000, for there will never be another $500,000 for me. I barely got this, right? And like, you can't build a unicorn company that way. It's just not, it's just completely limiting. And so I think like you have to build some services and education and kind of create a figmental safety net for them such that people can begin to get the comfort level of, okay, I can spend this money where it needs to be spent to see growth, or the comfort level of, hey man, just hit them up like regularly, like, hey, you need some help, need some help, need some help, because people ain't gonna ask you for help because they didn't have help on the way there, and so help is not really a thing, right? So
Right.
why would I ask you for help for no one has helped me to get to this point?
No, you don't know
Uh,
what you don't know. That's a
right. So yeah,
great add-on.
there's a lot of psychology involved in this whole process.
100%, million percent. So I can sit here and ask you questions all day long, but I want to turn to this beautiful audience because we're getting some really great questions. So Ha, my tech lead and partner in crime, I want you to unmute, or Jasmine Sanchez, unmute yourself because you've got the first question to our panel or to a specific guest. Go for it.
Sure, I'll ask the question. Thank you. Yeah, so my question was, what usually stands out to you in an entrepreneur? What makes you, like, if you can talk about a story or a time that, an entrepreneur really stood up to you, really inspired you, where you were at the point where you're like, yes, I want to invest in this person. I want to invest my time. I want to mentor this person. And like, even non-monetary, like just your time. I think sometimes like time is more valuable than money. So I would love to hear your stories about that.
Who wants to take that one? Taylor, you're nodding.
Sure. It's, for me, it's the story. It's the narrative, especially at the early stage, right? Because we can talk about traction and metrics all day long, but that's not where you're at. Probably what you're trying to communicate is how, back to that statement that I didn't even remember I said it and then someone put it in the chat, but like, you're on earth to do this thing, but like that is what resonates with me. I met a founder a few months ago that it just struck me. He was here to solve this problem. He ended up, due to family stuff that was really tough, involved with drugs when he was under 18 in the justice system. And when he got out, he struggled so hard to find a job. And there's lots of very great founders in this space trying to work on this. But what he focused on was why people weren't getting hired. Because there's plenty of companies out there that say they want to hire justice involved individuals, but then they don't know all their criminal history. They haven't really thought about like what they're comfortable with for different sort of related convictions, et cetera. And so he's trying to build a job board that decomposes all that ahead of time says, if you're going to post this job, you need to tell us what convictions you're comfortable with, because that's what his roadblock was. On top of that, he told me a story about how he's finding the justice involved individuals to get on the platform. And he went around and he was talking to parole officers and he was asking them, like, how do you help the people that are your clients that you're supposed to be supporting on their transition? And they were writing it down with pen and paper, and pay slips were still being delivered physically. And so he's like, I'm going to build the system that helps the parole officers make this whole thing like less painful for everyone. And by the way, that's also the supply side of his labor market that he's building. That is research, that's understanding your problem, and he's lived it. And so for me, when I hear stories like that, and it like, that one honestly, it like hits me pretty emotionally of like, this person needs to solve this and cares about solving it for other people. Hopefully not everyone has faced the tragedy that he has faced. It doesn't have to be a tragic story, but it is a story. It's a narrative that hits me. And that's what makes someone stand out. Because I'm like, I want to support and back that person. It's their journey. It's their mission. How do I help them have a better chance of succeeding?
Awesome. Next question comes from Medalis. Medalis, unmute and go ahead and ask your question live.
Hi everyone. So this is Meda. I heard the answer to part of the question I was asking, which was about why this person is put on this earth to solve the problem. And I guess oftentimes I see somebody with a lot of experience, they have a PhD or something, and it's a little overwhelming for somebody who doesn't. So just to put myself as an example, I'm working on a company that is going to connect book readers that want to talk about items that they're reading essentially live. And I don't have experience in publishing. However, I've been thinking about this problem for 5 years. It was the project I worked on when I was at a coding boot camp, and it's something that on weekends, nights, I've been like working on actively, both talking to users as well as figured out a way to bring on a co-founder with 5 years of technical experience. And even that at times feel like it may not be enough. So we're currently in the process of building this company and getting the product together. And I guess I've been attending these panels to kind of understand how do we want to tell our story. And again and again, I hear people say, you're the right person, you're the person put into this world to you know, solve this problem. And I don't know if it feels kind of big and heavy. So I guess if I could get more examples of how you go about making sure that this criteria is checked off. Thank you.
Who wants to take that one?
I mean, I can step in, throwing out a random example. So, you know, like I remember we had one guy come through Transparent Collective, and he was in the art space. And I didn't really know too much about the high-end art space, but it was clear that like he had gone through this like museum incubator and had been studying art and had people on his team who came from the art space. And he was building a solution that was helping them better manage their customers. And I think it was kind of similar to the idea of what Taylor was just saying, pieces of paper, right? Like, so everybody's tracking all their customers on literally pieces of paper, best case scenario Excel sheet. And like none of this would be able to help them like optimize the relationships or like upsell new product or anything like that. So we came in the program, we helped improve the pitch, we helped it formulate around how much time we were saving them because they want to spend more time on the gallery floor and less time in the back office. But then like, so we have already brought them in. But then like in terms of like raising the money, I have actually, he told me, he's like, hey man, you gotta come to Art Basel. You gotta see what that's like. I was like, all right, cool. So I went down to Art Basel. I mean, life-changing for sure. But main thing was I spent the day with him. And if you saw this dude, like only black person in this whole spot. I mean, like we're talking about high-end art. We're talking about $1 million art with like a banana on it. Like that's what we're talking about. And like, if you saw him move through these rooms and have the conversations with people that have no perspective for like where he came from in the world and how he was able to manage those relationships and like purvey his vision on this entire world, that like honestly should not care about him at all. Like just spending a day with him, I was like, this is that guy. So it was like very immediate. Like, okay, now that I've seen you do this, I can also help you like better explain how you are going to affect and go to market with this, right? So it's one thing to explain how you're going to solve the problem, but then like when you see it in action, it's like, oh, there's something special here. Even if someone tried to build this, they couldn't move through these rooms like you and actually move this to market. And like, that's an important part of his story. So in combination, you all of a sudden become the person that Taylor's talking about, the person to solve the problem, right? So, and he was able to, you know, go get his pre-seed round with like some further tweaks in that conversation. So I think that's part of it. But like, I'll tell you this. I'll tell you from my own personal perspective. It sounds crazy. It really does. But like, you just gotta keep. I mean, you do need to take feedback. You do need to optimize. You need to keep building. You need. You're young in this, and you probably haven't started a bunch of companies. So you do need to take in information to help you optimize what you're building. But ultimately, you need to keep recalibrating, maybe every month, every couple months. What are you going to achieve? Like, what is your vision? And like, don't let other people dictate that. And what you need to get there, you want to take feedback, but don't let other people dictate that. Because, you know, I personally had pitched over 300 investors, right? And had people like lie to me, like, oh, I'm gonna give you the money, and like mess up whole rounds. Like I've been through all that, right? And there became a point where I think subconsciously I had been convinced that I wasn't going to build $1 billion company. Like I had been convinced of that. And it didn't matter because it's not about the money for me. Like I know I'm going to sell my company for over 40 million. So it's going to be rich anyway. So why do I care about 20 million versus 100 million? I literally don't care. but I had been convinced that what I'm doing is smaller. And so like that wasn't fair because I had not taken the white space to recalibrate to remember, like, no, remember when I told you this was a huge ass company with no competition? It's still 5 years later, a huge ass company with no competition. So like in recalibrating, I was like, oh no, I don't really care if I show you monthly revenue updates. I don't really care if you think I need extra customers in this particular space. I don't care about any of that because I know what steps are going to be taken to get to $1 billion company. If you do not believe that, then you're not the partner. You know what I'm saying? So like, you know, after a while, even I go tell people all this stuff all the time. If you hit other people enough, it's going to affect you. It's going to affect your energy. It's going to affect you subconsciously, and like you need to recalibrate yourself. You know what I mean? Like,
Well said. Well
so
said,
like,
James.
yeah, I mean, like self help is like making sure you're okay and tracking yourself is just as important as trying to like go tell your story to someone else. So if you go get a bunch of no's and you ain't checked in with yourself and got some white space and recalibrated and kept yourself okay, then you're not going to make the right way forward because you're going to be carrying too much negative energy with you.
Good. Okay, next question. Kadisha, unmute and go ahead and ask live.
Hello. So my question was very similar to the woman who went before me, but just touching on that again, if you're a non-traditional founder like myself who doesn't have a prestigious degree, the example you gave of you watching how that man interacted in the room, you knew he was the founder to solve that problem. I've also found that if I interact with people for an extended period of time or I talk up to them for an extended period of time, they're able to see my passion and how I'm uniquely suited to solve this problem. However, it's hard to translate that into a 5-minute pitch or a 10-minute conversation. I think it would be a lot easier. For me, I'm working on a relationship wellness app that gives couples a new way to say I love you. It would be easier to say, oh, I'm a relationship researcher and I've been researching relationships for 20 years and I'm top 20 in my field. Even though I have that person on my team, how do I show that I'm the founder to solve the problem in a 5-minute conversation when I don't have the time to show them through my work ethic and my passion and my knowledge when we're having that initial conversation?
Paige, you want to take that?
I'm so excited about this question because I'm
Good.
100% with you. So 2 quick things. One thing is founders that I have seen do this really well have given me like some of their secrets that are not like super secret, but it's like, what things do they know about their market that their competitors could not know? Because they're so good at, like, they know their customers so well. And the example I always think about is I had a mentor who took me to a meeting with a CEO in gifting, and I was building a gifting company at the time. And I remember asking him, so how are things going right now? And he said, oh, just waiting for the holiday season. And I remember thinking to myself, why are you waiting for the holiday season? We figured out a whole stream of revenue that's way outside of the holiday season that's scalable. And I remember looking at my mentor for a second. He was like, keep your mouth shut. Because it was like, this is like a thing that I knew that other people didn't know because I'd been spending a year digging around in this. Now, I didn't have a background in gifting at all, but I had a background in like public policy and research and like, and education. So I spent a lot of time talking to my customers using my product in front of them. Whereas this other person was really removed from the customer at this point because they were now in this position that was more like an insider, like Taylor was saying earlier, right? So I think about what those secrets are and how can you package them in a way that allows you to communicate quickly and effectively. Listen, let me tell you, I've got 20 years of experience, but let me tell you what our competitors haven't been able to figure out that we know and can solve for better than anyone else. And that's defensibility. Like, we can defend our position in the market because I have 20 years of experience. And I'll say that this is regardless of whether or not you have a Harvard PhD or, wherever I went to a state school in Missouri. I'm very proud of that. And one of the things that I think about all the time is I'm able to, sometimes it allows you to fly under the radar in ways that other people can't and get information that other people can't. Mm-hmm. So we always like to talk about like differences of strengths. What makes you different and how does that make you stronger and more effective at what you do? So I love what you're doing. And I think all founders should be thinking about this all the time. James said something earlier that I just wanted to jump on really quickly. I want everyone to remember that you know your company and industry better than probably any investor who's going to sit across the table from you, unless you're talking to an industry expert. So like James said, you might walk into a room and they are going to disprove all these things. Their position is no. They start at no. That's their default. So when you walk into a room and they give you all this feedback, some of that feedback is BS because they don't know it as well as you know it. And you're like, well, they told me to change this. And it's like, so what? Like, yes, they told you to change that, but I want you to continue. And this comes back to you, Meta, as well. Like, know what you know, and then take this in as feedback and then be like, okay, I can adjust, but I'm not going to change everything because this person told me no, because they don't know better. I know better.
Yeah, I like that. I like knowing what you know. You're going to have assumptions. Let the assumptions be more flexible and more informed. But in terms of what you know, it's got to be, you got to make sure there's like a hard stop on someone trying to tell you something they don't know about. Like, unless they're like, oh, Qualtrics is about to take your company, Pilot, because I know Ryan Smith just told me that their whole engineering team is about the whole build a video product, and then they're going to go copy your thing. I'll be like, oh, I'm scared. If you tell me that Qualtrics is a competitor, I'm going to tell you, okay, thank you for your time. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like,
Yeah.
you know, like what feedback is real is like how you have to like manage these things, and what you know is what you know. That's your secret.
That's great. Let's squeeze in a couple more. Next up, Loretta, ask your question live.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for the session. My question has expanded since I first wrote it out. So it's two parts now. First is on this qualification theme that we've been talking about. I'm just going to put it out there that I do not have a college degree at all right now. And I feel like I've been working for 20 years in Silicon Valley. I mean, I don't feel that, I know that. But I feel like my not having that type of qualification is what made me scrappy enough to get into the engineering teams and then the machine learning teams that I eventually ended up working on. And so I'm right now trying to jump off or I am working on this machine learning project and application. So I want to hear, first of all, just to go down that path a little bit further, not only do I not have a prestigious college degree, I have none. So I wonder what attitudes are about that. And then my second question is, being that person, I am very scrappy. And right now I'm like a sponge. I've been a product person, but I know nothing really about fundraising or business strategy. So I'm like the first to sign up for these sessions, and Accelerator sounds great. But I wonder, what are the pitfalls? What would be, are there any examples of like bad outcomes of joining an accelerator or reasons not to?
Taylor, that's a good question for you. Or unless, James, you got something you want to throw on?
No, on her first part. I have an electrical engineering degree from University of Michigan. So that's a top 5 engineering school. Nobody gives a shit. I ain't go to Stanford or MIT. I literally never mention it, and no one gives a shit. So like, it's your personal confidence that you have to put in check. Because if you've been working for 20 years, if you transition yourself into product positions and AI machine learning positions, then you can't tell me nothing about a college degree. So that's your own personal choice as to how you're going to present yourself, because no one gives a shit that I'm an electrical engineer.
Yeah, I think I'm not going to say that anymore. I've been saying that.
Yeah.
Boom.
I mean, look.
Like in interviews and intros and stuff, you're like, oh,
it doesn't matter.
At the front desk. I think that's the last time I'm going to say that.
It's the last time. My wife does it too. My wife doesn't have a college degree, and I was I gotta get my degree. I'm like, you are from East Side Detroit. We're from Detroit. You make a shit ton of money, and you work at Pandora now. Like, what makes you think that for some reason you need to verify yourself by completing your English degree? Because you don't even do English anymore. Like, you're in advertisement and sales training. Like, so like, these things don't connect. These are like personal milestones that we've been kind of set to think that these are requirements of life. And it's understandable that maybe, you know, you tried to achieve something, you felt like, man, I never really achieved it. I really want to achieve it. That's a stamp on my personal confidence. But in the rest of the world, that's an internal fight. The rest of the world doesn't care. So it's just how you present yourself and how you feel about yourself confidence-wise.
That's great. That's awesome. Taylor, I want you to add on the second half of that question. What are the pitfalls of it? What are the bad outcomes you've seen? What are the reasons not to join an accelerator?
Yeah. So first of all, the people that really care, sorry, I can't not respond to that last one. I
Go
don't
ahead.
like that as well. But you know who really wants you to care if you went to Harvard or not? Harvard, and they're not here, and they're not going to fund you. So like, just let them and all that go, because I think what you described was a strength that I would respect as an investor. So just validating that point. Last time, we're going to hold you to it. Don't do it. Don't feel like you ever need to do that again. Because you rock, because you've done stuff, you've made your path, and that's what's important. The thing, I think it goes back to where we started this entire conversation, which is what outcomes are you looking to achieve? And if you don't see a clear path to that, but you still join Accelerator, that's when, I'm a big believer that like alignment is what makes business work. And so if you don't have that, it's just not going to happen. Like, you're going to show up, you're going to be disappointed, they're going to be disappointed. The other thing that I thought, I apologize, I think James, I don't remember who said it, but someone was like, the accelerator shouldn't be pushing their values on you. 100% agree with that. You should have the values for the company you want to build. That said, check them on their values, because you want to make sure that they don't have values that you disagree with. And that's another thing that I would say is like, don't just be like, oh, that person, those people are really seem smart, have a lot of good metrics of number of companies that have gone through in funding. It's like, what companies do you fund and not fund, and why? They better have a really good answer for you on that. And if they don't, like, that's a red flag. And then the other thing is, figure out if there's patterns that you should be worried about, of like, hey, the managing director said that they would show up and they didn't, or, they overstate this, or they interact in this way, or they create a really negative competitive sort of experience between the class or something like that. Sadly, most of us are really good at trying to make sure that those voices don't get to the top if you're doing that. And sadly, there are people that do that. I don't think you should go into their accelerators. But the best way to diligence that is go talk to people that have gone through their program that aren't the ones they tell you to go talk to. Go talk to the ones that aren't on the list, that have gone through the program. And maybe they'll give you a bunch of really positive stuff about that program. Great, you validated that. This is like any sort of reference checking. If I tell you, here's the references I want you to check for me, I'm going to give you all the people that love me. But you need to go find the other people that hopefully also I've positively impressed on them in through our interactions, but very much also focus on, sort of saying like, hey, what did they struggle at? What did they not deliver on? That's the way I would diligence that.
Well said. Unfortunately, we're at time. This conversation could go on all day, and I wish it would, but we're going to have to take it to the digital world. I know you can get a hold of Paige, James, and Taylor. Their handles, their emails are all shared. Please reach out. I encourage all of you to apply for and look at their programs, apply to their programs, and keep the learning going. On behalf of Sparrow Ventures, I want to thank everyone for joining this fundraising discussion today. We will be editing this discussion and posting it online, so take a look for it and look out for the next session, which will be next week. Thanks everybody for joining, and have a really great day.